have featured before, Latin America player, but Jonathan Evans is the first time that myself and Lou will be covering this player, and we can take a look at the accolades of both these players. I'll kick off with Jonathan's. You can see that he started back in 2016 with a London Regional top 8 there, so then followed up by a World's finalist in 2016. It doesn't come much better than that. 2018 Sheffield Regional top 8, and then 2019 continuing on the streak with a North America International Championship semi-finalist. So a very good list of accomplishments there for Jonathan.
And on the opposing side of the field, we've got Alejandro Diaz, that we've been able to showcase a lot throughout kind of the region finals and the global finals yesterday. And again, looking at these accolades stemming back from 2015, you know, regional champion at Santiago, then 2016 semi-finalist, 2018 semi-finalist again, and then 2019 top 16 finish. So again, lots of amazing top finishes between both of our players. But there's some interesting changes amongst the teams. If we first take a look at Jonathan's team, the one thing I love is this kind of dual weather mode that's going on. It was something that was a popular call back in 2016, and you can see 2016 is when Jonathan actually made finals at the World Championship. So I think having access to this dual weather does allow you so much flexibility depending on the matchup that you're against.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more with you, Lou. And the fact that we're actually seeing a Kyogre this deep into the tournament is a testament to the ability that it's got to maybe disrupt some of these Sun teams. And then, you know, you're not just relying on that rain mode either. You've got your own Sun mode in there with Torkoal. That's a great Pokemon if Trick Room decides to go up from an opponent to really utilize that side of things. But you've got the Venusaur as well. That's another option to take advantage of your other alternative weather. And yeah, like you say, the flexibility that the dual weather gives you in general is just phenomenal. And then supported, interestingly, by Grimmsnarl and Incineroar. Normally players opt for one or the other, but Jonathan really going with both of those here to kind of interact and support the different cores that he's got within his team.
Yes, and then on Alejandro's side of the field with the 6 Pokemon, there's something that Lee and I have got very excited about every time we've seen a match from Alejandro. It's been phenomenal. And the one thing I've really liked is this adjustment coming into the global finals. He's added on that Glastrier onto the team, and it's really nice kind of seeing the Glastrier and the Calyrex Shadow Rider on the team there. It does allow so many different options, and the support that you could see from that Indeedee and the Glastrier, where you tried to go for the self-weakness policy activation with the Mystical Fire, was absolutely amazing. And I wonder if that's something that Alejandro could bring to this match.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult, you know, if you see something like the Glastrier come onto the field and then the Sun mode, especially if it's Incineroar with its Intimidate, that's going to make it difficult for Glastrier to kind of build that momentum, and especially with something like Torkoal, that's potentially going to be, depending on the build of it, of course, it could be very defensively built and threatened with things like Burning Jealousy, so it makes getting those kind of moves that are boosting your side of the field a little bit more dangerous to kind of go for, and makes it difficult. But the Shadow Rider Calyrex is something that's going to be a big threat, especially with the Whimsicott speed control support as well on Alejandro's side of the field.
Yeah, the Kyogre I think is going to be a really big problem for Alejandro to deal with, particularly when you kind of look at the team composition. The one Pokemon that's probably the biggest threat to that Kyogre is, you know, being able to utilize any electric type moves on that Rotom, for example, but it's Rotom Heat, not Rotom Wash, so it doesn't want to take any water type moves in return. So maybe it's going to be interesting to see how Alejandro is going to be able to play around that Kyogre, particularly if it's maybe built quite bulkily, then it's going to be quite hard to take down. But I think we should jump right into this match. I'm excited to see a Kyogre, and hopefully we'll be able to see it out here in this game 1. So let's see the leads jumping out into the action. It's going to be the Calyrex and the Whimsicott for Alejandro. And on Jonathan's side of the field, there's going to be the Grimmsnarl and the Kyogre. Delighted to see the Kyogre. Remember, it's the only one here in Global Finals taken to the stage.
Yeah, it's really great to see the Kyogre, and it is going to be able to get its drought ability onto the field. And interestingly enough, the Jonathan leading the Grimmsnarl next to the Kyogre here, potentially got options to go for screen support with the light screen. It's really going to increase the ability of the Kyogre to take these big special attacks from the opposing Shadow Rider Calyrex, because the one thing that Kyogre does boast is a huge special defense stat, and not only that, it's got huge special attack as well, also boosted by the rain.
Yeah, everything on the special side is coming thumbs up for that Kyogre, but it's just going to protect, as it does the Calyrex on Alejandro's side of the field, as Grimmsnarl does exactly what we said it should do, Lee, and goes for that light screen just to protect the Kyogre even more. Whimsicott not going for any support, just going straight away for that Moonblast into the opposing Grimmsnarl. Wants to deal over about a third of damage to it there, and also just get a cheeky drop for good measure.
Yeah, and just getting the damage onto the Grimmsnarl is quite a smart thing for Alejandro to do. You know, you take that line of support away from Jonathan's side of the field, and he is going to be able to function a little bit better and a little bit safer, knowing that his Calyrex isn't threatened so much. But knowing that there is something like Sucker Punch on the Grimmsnarl here, the Calyrex isn't sitting in the most safest position anyway. The light screen up from Jonathan, a nice play, protecting the Kyogre as well, meaning that he's going to get the maximum kind of protection with the light screen, and in a position where he could even go for the Dynamax onto the Kyogre now, just to get some huge damage onto that Calyrex this turn.
You're right though, the Sucker Punch is a threat, and Calyrex is going to take it and get a clean one-hit KO against it from Jonathan's Grimmsnarl there. Going to be removing the restricted from Alejandro straight away from the field. And Whimsicott just going to go for another Moonblast here, targeting down into that Grimmsnarl, but of course the light screen going to be helping Grimmsnarl out as well in the face of these Moonblasts. Kyogre now free to go straight away for that Origin Pulse. It finds its mark on the Whimsicott, and it's going to be boosted up by the Rain as well. Takes it right down to its Focus Sash. So a lot of destruction coming out here from Jonathan. Very interesting to not see something like an Indeedee switch in there, maybe to set up the Psychic Terrain to stop the Sucker Punch. But, you know, great for Jonathan. What a turn.
Yeah, getting rid of that restricted in Calyrex is such a huge advantage going into this game, and the rest of the turns, you know, the Kyogre sitting perfectly healthy here. The Grimmsnarl still on the field, going to be able to get a Reflect Up now to potentially just protect the Kyogre even more from those physical attacks that are now present from the Glastria. And again, the Kyogre in a position where it can just click the Origin Pulse button if it wants to just get damage onto both the Whimsicott, knock out there, get some nice damage onto the Glastria, or it's still got the option to Dynamax if Jonathan wants to, and I'm really hoping that we see that.
Yeah, Dynamax right now would be amazing, and I think that's exactly what we're seeing on Alejandro's side of the field here. Going to be able to Dynamax up that Glastria, so going to be able to start, you know, applying some kind of pressure with potentially high horsepowers, just to maybe try and boost up the special defense on Alejandro's side of the field by going for those max quakes off the high horsepower. Whimsicott going to go for the taunt, however, straight away down into that opposing Kyogre, going to stop it from going for any potential protects a little bit later on. Grimmsnarl, however, in the face of a physical attacker, now wisely sets up the Reflect to help out Kyogre a little bit more, and Kyogre taking full advantage of its speed here and going for that Water Spout. Picks up the KO, of course, on the 1 HP Whimsicott, and deals a big chunk of damage to that Dynamax Glastria. Glastria, however, wants to change up the weather and stop these water-type moves from getting their boost and going for that max Hailstorm. It does pick up the KO against the Glastria. It does, of course, change the weather and start dealing out a little bit of chip. But if you are Jonathan with that Kyogre, if you wanted to reset the rain, you can by Dynamaxing up your Kyogre and going for one of those powerful water-type moves.
Yeah, but the big thing here for Alejandro is, you know, it's taken him a little while to get rid of the Grimmsnarl and a lot of resources to kind of do that, but he has done it, and he does get that Chilling Near boost as well, which is definitely going to help out the Glastria and the remaining turns that it's got in its Dynamax form, especially, you know, when it's got something like Indeedee to come in and kind of help with that redirection, especially when Venusaur hits the field. You think, oh, well, this is probably the perfect Pokemon to see. If you are Glastria, it's a nice easy target for me to go for another max Hailstorm, but like you said, Lou, you've got to be conscious that, you know, the Kyogre is going to be able to go for the Dynamax itself, go for a Max Geyser, and just revert the weather into a more kind of suitable kind of mode for Jonathan to take advantage of in this game.
Yeah, and it makes things a little bit more difficult for Venusaur as well. If Indeedee wants to come in here and go for that redirection, having access to the Lumberry means it's going to be able to take one of those sleep powders and not fall asleep. So it can redirect that risk away from the Glastria and allow it to go for another damaging move, try and pick up some KOs against Jonathan's team here.
Yeah, and the Glastria is not something to be kind of taken lightly either, because with the Chilling Near boost, it is going to be hitting very hard, and it is known to be a very, you know, defensively good Pokemon anyway. So it has got the capabilities. If Jonathan doesn't respect it here, he really needs to kind of remove the Indeedee as soon as possible. You'll be able to do that, take away that redirection, and then you can focus all of your kind of energy down onto that Glastria for the remaining turns that it is in its Dynamax form.
Well, Jonathan's going for the Dynamax in this game one, and to your delight, Lee, it's going to be that Kyogre. So this is where Kyogre can apply a lot of defensive pressure with some of those powerful max geysers, and also then, of course, reset up the weather just to be able to boost those water-type moves even further. Indeedee just going to go straight for a protect here. No supportive measures coming out from it in this particular turn, as Kyogre does go for that max geyser. So going to be targeting down into that opposing Indeedee. Not going to be dealing too much through the protect, but I think boosting up the weather for the next turn does put it in a great position. We know that it has got some good kind of speed advantage here at the moment in the face of that Glastria. So Venusaur going straight for the Sleep Powder, and I love this drop here from Jonathan, going for that Sleep Powder into the Glastria, even when you know it could be redirected away. just being able to make the most of that opportunity is fantastic.
Yeah, shutting that completely down and putting all the momentum back on Jonathan's side of the field. And that's the big thing here, you know, just covering bases in case you don't see a redirect with the follow me, in case, you know, Alejandro does want to preserve the Ndidi for an additional turn. And it really kind of pays off for Jonathan being able to shut down the Glastrier with that sleep powder, making it near impossible for him to make a comeback in this match, especially with the Ndidi being an easy target here after it protected that last turn.
Yeah, unfortunately not able to get the double protect, so I had to take the full force of that Max Geyser, and Glastrier going to be able to wake up, however, and does go for this Max Hailstorm. So once again changing up the weather, finding its mark onto that Venusaur, taking it down to a full one-hit KO. But I think with the sort of numbers looking here, you know, there's a lot more Pokemon on Jonathan's side of the field for this Glastrier to try and contend with, and Glastrier is not known for having moves where it can hit multiple targets, so Jonathan's just going to be able to kind of really focus down against it. It does get, of course, the Chilling Neigh ability, so it's going to be at +1, but just with the pressure that Jonathan's able to exert on his side of the field, particularly with a Torkoal coming in from the back, Fire-type moves are going to be very effective against this Glastrier.
Yeah, the one thing that you would say is a little bit of a hindrance to Jonathan now is that the drought ability really weakening the ability of these water type attacks on the Kyogre on Jonathan's side of the field, so not the most ideal Pokemon to bring in. But at the same time, the Torkoal, not a bad Pokemon in general. You know, it has got the support from the Grimmsnarl from earlier on in this match with that Reflect, so it is probably going to be able to take an attack from the Glastrier, at least one, and kind of get maybe either a Burning Jealousy, a Heat Wave off, or even Yawn to disrupt it going forward in this match. So Jonathan still has ways to kind of disrupt it even after that early wake up from the sleep powder earlier.
Yeah, and Kyogre just going here for the Max Geyser. Even in the sun, it's going to be able to kind of chip away at this Glastrier. Actually, I think it looks like it got the solid KO there. And I was going to say, there's not really a lot, even at +1, that Glastrier could do in retaliation to that Kyogre anyway. So as lovely as to see Torkoal on the field, I think it really was all about Kyogre to try and take out that game 1. That's exactly what it was able to do for Jonathan Evans.
Yeah, a very dominant kind of first game there from Jonathan, and really asserting his position with that Kyogre and really being very patient with it and Dynamaxing it at the perfect time to really take advantage of that. And I think the big thing here was that Alejandro allowing the kind of Sucker Punch to punish and take down the Calyrex before it was really able to do anything in that game. Really made it a lot easier for Jonathan, and the way he managed the Glastrier as well, like you said, with that Sleep Powder where he was kind of punishing no redirection that turn and just kind of maximizing his gains off that turn was really nice to see, and just made it a little bit too difficult for Alejandro in the end to kind of come out on top in that match.
Yeah, it's one of those things you need to take kind of the knowledge gained from this particular game and kind of how the turns played out, and maybe try and adapt them going into that game too if the same scenarios do start to emerge. Knowing that Ndidi was in the back, for example, if that had switched in on that Sucker Punch turn, things could have been very different, and that kind of Calyrex might have been able to be utilized a little bit stronger, start dealing some big damage, and, you know, weaken possibly the water spout potential that Kyogre had.
Yeah, and the other thing I think to consider if you are Alejandro, like I mentioned it in that game, the amount of turns that it took Alejandro to get rid of the Grimmsnarl on Jonathan's side of the field, it was attracting all the attention, you know, and leaving that Kyogre alone, and the amount of turns it took him to get rid of that Grimmsnarl finally put him in such a bad position that it wasn't really able to capitalize from that point on, and it wasn't really worth the return. Whereas if you're maybe concentrating a little bit more on the big threats like the Kyogre, for instance, it might be a better way to go down, because the Grimmsnarl is all well and good, it can do a bit of damage here and there. Obviously Sucker Punch does threaten, Spirit Break definitely disrupts and things like that, but if you can get rid of the big powerhouses, then it really limits the ability for Jonathan to kind of be able to kind of capitalize in the positions like he did in that first game.
Well, let's jump into game 2 and see exactly if Kyogre is going to be coming right back into the match and dealing the same level of destruction, or if Alejandro is able to adapt. It's going to be a lead of the Calyrex and the Whimsicott coming out here from Alejandro. And then on Jonathan's side, very classic combination we see in kind of rain mode teams. There's a Tornadus and a Kyogre on the field.
Yeah, a very, very common and well-used combination from previous formats. The Tornado is a very nice partner for the Kyogre and can do really good work here. Supporting with Tailwind, you haven't got this green support like you had with the Grimmsnarl, but Kyogre's still in a nice position where it's still going to be able to get big attacks off, especially if we do see a Tailwind that we didn't really see from Alejandro in game 1, but maybe he's now forced to go for that Tailwind here, which kind of eats up a little bit of turn time for the Whimsicott here, and the Calyrex probably be forced to kind of go for an attack here. So if Jonathan decides to go for maybe an Origin Pulse or Water Spout this turn, or even max the Kyogre here and go after chasing down the Calyrex, it's a good opportunity to try and remove it as quickly from the board as possible.
Yeah, the Tailwind potential here is strong on both sides of the field. Obviously, Tornadus and the Whimsicott both have access to it, both have the Prankster ability. And it's one of those things, as good as it is to get the Tailwind up on your side of the field, sometimes it is just essential to be able to match the Tailwind of your opponent. Alejandro, though, going straight away for the Dynamax on that Calyrex, though, so going to be able to deal a lot of big offensive pressure as Tornadus goes straight away for a Protector, so no Tailwind and no Dynamax coming out from Jonathan. It's going to be the Tailwind, however, from the Whimsicott. So if Jonathan wants to match this next turn, then it's going to obviously have that one extra turn when the Tailwind expires on Alejandro's side. That could be advantageous going forward. The Max Phantasm is going to find its mark on that Tornadus through the Protect, deal a decent chunk of damage against it here, and of course, going to be lowering the defense on both of these Pokemon. That could be critical later, depending on the Pokemon that Alejandro has in the back. Something like that Glastrier would love to take advantage of the defense drops. Whimsicott going to avoid the way out of this Origin Pulse, but the Calyrex in the rain is going to have to take the full brunt of it. It does over 50% there, Lee.
Yeah, and you know, like, unfortunate to miss the Whimsicott, because then you kind of take away the sash that it's got there. The thing that Jonathan needs to worry about this next turn, especially if he's trying to utilize maybe a Tailwind of his own with the Tornadus, is a potential taunt on the Whimsicott that he knows is there from Alejandro's side of the field. But the Calyrex taking huge damage that turn, you know, and unnecessary damage really. And the Kyogre still in a good position. He's going to be threatened obviously going into this next turn by the Dynamax from the Calyrex, but it can max itself. Like I keep saying every turn, the Kyogre finds itself in a position where if it does max at any one of these points, it's going to be able to really be very impactful for Jonathan.
Yeah, and I like this adjustment here from Jonathan. Obviously, Incineroar isn't going to mind taking any of those kind of max Phantasms, and I think the critical thing as well is to stop that Calyrex from maybe getting a KO and obviously getting the Grimnade boost. You don't want it to be able to get the free KO against it. And Jonathan here going for the Dynamax on at the Kyogre. I love this because, like you say, Lee, those max guys, particularly in the rain while the weather isn't being manipulated, are going to be so strong. Whimsicott does go for the taunt, of course, not affecting Incineroar because it is a dark type and is immune to Prankster, as the Calyrex does go for this max Quake. So it targets down into that Kyogre, does a little bit of damage. That would have weakened that Water Spout if it hadn't been in its Dynamax form. And of course, critically, just getting up that special defense boost on Alejandro's side of the field, which is what you need in the face of a special attacker like Kyogre. But Kyogre is still very strong, and the rain is up, and it's in Dynamax. So this Max Geyser going to be able to target down into that opposing Calyrex and seal up a KO.
Yeah, the special defense boost not quite enough there to allow the Calyrex to kind of see out another turn here, which is a little bit unfortunate for Alejandro, but a great turn here from Jonathan, again picking his turn perfectly with when to max the Kyogre to minimize the damage coming out from that Calyrex. And you know, he knew that the Tornadus was prime taunt bait here from the Whimsicott, so the Whimsicott really tied up that turn, giving them the opportunity to get the Incineroar onto the field at a perfect time and preserve the Tornadus for the late game, where he's still got the option, once he's able to remove potentially the Whimsicott from the field, to utilize that Tailwind himself.
That's the thing, if you can keep the Tailwind towards the end, particularly if you're able to stall out the Tailwind turns on your opponent, that can be exactly what you need to kind of seal up a victory. Alejandro now bringing in the Indeedee, that's going to stop a lot of the Prankster potential coming out from the Whimsicott. It's not going to be able to throw any other taunts or, you know, Prankster moves that go across the battlefield, so we'll only really be able to utilize things like Helping Hand or Moonblast coming in this way, and Moonblast really isn't going to do too much to either of these Pokemon.
No, not really. You know, the Whimsicott going to struggle to do damage, and the Indeedee not really known to be an offensive kind of Pokemon itself. It does have the Psychic Terrain helping it out, but not going to be very useful against the Incineroar. You know, the Dark type in there, completely immune to it and free to kind of do what it wants going into this next turn.
Well, Indeedee going for the Mystical Fire, certainly not for damage potential, but lowering that special attack could be critical. Kyogre is going to go for the Max Geyser, however, of course, with the rain up, it's still going to be able to get the boost on his Water-type moves, and unfortunately, despite Indeedee's best efforts with the Mystical Fire, it certainly wasn't a critical maneuver at all. It's able to pick up a solid one-hit KO against it. Incineroar in the rain going to be going for this Flare Blitz, connecting down onto that Whimsicott. It doesn't pick up a KO, and of course it has Focus Sash anyway, but that now has been broken, and that allows Jonathan the opportunity to be able to pick up a really clean KO against it in this following turn. There's not a lot that Whimsicott can do to either of Jonathan's Pokemon. It's going to be a prime target for a KO.
Yeah, and the Glastria now coming onto the field for Alejandro, and unlike in game 1 where he was able to max this Pokemon, he's not got the capabilities to do that now, and it does make it a lot more difficult to be able to take these big, you know, max guys as are coming out from the Kyogre. And you can see even with the drop from the Mystical Fire the previous turn, it's still doing phenomenal damage boosted by the rain here. So it's just so hard to contain this Pokemon once it starts kind of that momentum swing.
Yeah, and Jonathan just switching out the Incineroar so it can intimidate that Glastria going forward in the match. Kyogre going to be going for a max Geyser here again in that rain. Going to be targeting down into the opposing Whimsicott. Looks like it's going to be able to pick up the nice clean KO against it. And now Alejandro is down to just the Glastria in the face of all 4 of Jonathan's Pokemon here. Glastria is going to go for the high horsepower and target down into the Venusaur that just switched in. Previously, of course, the Incineroar. So Venusaur able to take that really, really well. And poor Glastria doesn't have access to its Dynamax. You know, Alejandro's already used that on the Calyrex. So it's going to be a little bit difficult for the Glastria to try and close this out.
Yeah, especially with threats like Sleep Powder that can come out from the Venusaur, and then how powerful the Origin Pulse or the Water Spout can be, because we know that Kyogre is going to be faster than that Glastria, and we do just see the forfeit there from Alejandro. And Jonathan moving on again in this tournament, and in